The Prime Minister has said more work needs to be done to make Donald Trump's peace plan for Ukraine fit for purpose. It was a polite rejection of the deal as it stands from Sir Keir Starmer and other European leaders at the G20 in South Africa. They object to its requirements that Ukraine give up territory, reduce its armed forces and never join NATO. Sir Keir is expected to speak to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky later today and has said he will talk to Donald Trump directly about the plan in the coming days. Our political correspondent Harry Horton reports.
In Kyiv this morning, President Zelensky honoured the victims of the 1930s Great Famine, when Stalin's Soviet regime was blamed for the deaths of millions of Ukrainians. Today, Putin's Russia is the enemy to whom Trump's America is urging Ukraine to hand over territory. In South Africa, world leaders gathered for the G20, but with the US boycotting this year's summit, countries could only respond to the peace plan cooked up by Washington and Moscow. That 28-point peace plan handed to Ukraine includes agreement to surrender territory in the east, to limit its armed forces to 600,000 personnel, to agree never to join NATO and to drop any claims of war crimes committed by Russia. On the sidelines of the G20, Ukraine's allies from Europe and beyond said the plan had important elements but needed additional work.
It is important to keep firmly in mind what we're all trying to achieve, which is a just and lasting peace, but also underpinning that is the principle that I've always adhered to, that all matters about Ukraine must be determined in the end by Ukraine, and that's why we're talking very regularly with the Ukrainians.
I would like to get the peace. It should have happened a long time ago. The Ukraine war with Russia should have never happened. If I were president, it never would have happened. We're trying to get it ended. One way or the other, we have to get it ended.
In his daily address, President Zelensky said world leaders should ensure that crimes against humanity and states are never rewarded, and said a Ukrainian delegation would enter talks with the US on Sunday. In southern Ukraine this morning, regional officials captured the cleanup after another night of Russian airstrikes. The talks on a peace plan continue, but in the meantime, so does the war. Well, Downing Street sources describe that phone call between the Prime Minister and President Trump as good and constructive, and Downing Street says that the two leaders have agreed to speak again tomorrow following those talks in Geneva. Keir Starmer also spoke to President Zelensky of Ukraine tonight, and the two leaders said there would likely be further talks with European allies in the days after those talks in Geneva that are increasingly looking like they're absolutely critical to the future of peace in Ukraine. Critical because it's the first time that Ukraine will have had its own input into this peace plan that the US and Russia have come up with. Leaders here at the G20 walking a bit of a tightrope, trying hard not to criticise President Trump's plan whilst also being clear that it does need some work, and most crucially of all, it needs the input and agreement of Ukraine.